Far out past the last warm window of the world, the galaxies hang in the dark like lanterns set adrift on a still black sea, and they are not quite as motionless as they seem. They are drifting apart, every one of them, carried away from every other on a tide of widening space, and yet there is an old and quiet question folded into that drifting, whether the tide might, in some unthinkably distant age, turn around and begin to come home. Some have imagined a far night when the sky itself slowly warms again, when the most ancient light deepens from red toward blue, when two great spirals that have always been falling apart begin instead to fall together. You do not have to reach toward any of it. Let the room hold you. Let the weight of the long day loosen at the jaw and the shoulders and slide away. The whole vast question is already here, resting softly in the dark around the small warm space where you lie, and it asks nothing of you tonight but stillness. Picture the faintest galaxy you can imagine, a smudge of pale light so far off that its glow set out toward you before the earth had cooled. That little gleam is part of an enormous exhalation, a breathing out of everything that began nearly 14 billion years ago and has been swelling outward ever since. And the gentlest of all the great cosmic questions is simply this: does a breath that goes out always, in the end, come back in? Tonight the mind can wander along the edge of that idea, the long and patient possibility that the universe might one day cease its expansion, pause at the very top of its slow rise, and draw itself back down into a single warm gathering, the ending that has long been called the Big Crunch. There is nothing here to fear and nothing to solve. It is only a thought to hold loosely, the way you might cradle a smooth stone in the palm before letting it go. You do not need to remember any of what drifts past you now. There will be no questions in the morning, and nothing here will be tested. Let the ideas arrive like passing weather, settle for a moment if they wish, and move on. What stays with you, stays. What slips away was never yours to keep, and losing it cost you nothing at all. There is no thread to follow too closely, no figure to memorize, no name to hold. Let the mind grow wide as the dark itself, and simply float through these wonders one after another, the way a leaf turns upon the surface of a river that is in no hurry to arrive anywhere. The current will carry you. You have only to rest upon it, and breathe, and let the long story tell itself. Begin then with the simple shape of the idea, for it is gentler than its name. The Big Crunch is not a disaster waiting in tomorrow's sky. It is one possible ending to the universe, a mirror held up to its own beginning. If there were enough matter woven through all of space, and if its gathered gravity were strong enough, then the great outward rush that started everything could one day slow and falter and at last reverse, the galaxies easing to a stop, hanging for a long still moment, and then beginning the unhurried fall back toward one another. It would be the Big Bang lived backward, run in reverse across spans of time so vast they make a single human life seem briefer than a blink. And the whole of it, were it ever to come, would unfold so slowly that no creature living within it would feel the faintest tremor of the turning. The thought has a long pedigree, older than most of the instruments we now point at the sky. Long before anyone could measure how swiftly the galaxies were truly moving, careful minds working only with the mathematics of gravity found that a universe filled evenly with matter could not simply sit still. It had to be doing something, either spreading outward or drawing inward, never resting in perfect and motionless balance. And among the possible futures those equations allowed was this one, a cosmos that climbs for a while and then comes home. The idea was set down in the language of mathematics decades before there was any way at all to test it, a future glimpsed first in pure thought, sketched on paper in the calm before the evidence arrived. The deciding question, in the end, comes down to a single word: wait. Whether the universe ever falls back upon itself depends on how much matter and energy it holds, spread through every stretch of space. There is a particular, delicate amount, a threshold the cosmos either crosses or does not, and everything turns upon which side of it we live. Astronomers have a soft name for that knife-edge value. They call it the critical density, and it is astonishingly slight. Were all the matter in the universe smoothed out perfectly evenly, it would come to only a few atoms of hydrogen in every cubic metre of space, thinner by far than the emptiest vacuum ever made on Earth, emptier than the space between the planets, emptier than the long reaches between the stars. A single human breath holds more atoms than a vast room of the cosmos would at that ghostly average, and the entire fate of everything rests upon whether the true thinness of all things falls a touch above that mark or a touch below. There is a single Greek letter that astronomers use to carry this whole question, and it is a kind of quiet poetry that the letter they chose is the very last one of their alphabet. The amount of stuff in the universe, measured against that critical threshold, is written with the letter omega, the symbol that has always stood for the end of things, the final letter, the close of the line. If omega is greater than 1, the cosmos holds more than enough weight to one day fall back together. If it is less than 1, the expansion runs on forever, and if it rests exactly upon 1, the universe slows towards stillness without ever quite reversing. So the whole vast destiny of all the galaxies hides inside a single number, balanced delicately near the value of 1, and the work of cosmology is, in part, simply to measure it. It helps to picture the whole matter as a stone tossed softly upward into the night. Throw it gently, and the Earth's pull will slow it, stop it, and bring it back down into your open hand. Throw it hard enough, and it will climb away forever, never to return. And there is one perfect, impossible speed, exactly between the two, at which it would rise more and more slowly without ever quite falling, and without ever quite escaping. The universe is that stone, and the great question is only whether it was thrown enough to come home, or hard enough to climb away into the endless dark. The big crunch is the future in which the stone, having risen for an age, turns at last and begins its long, slow descent. In that descending future, the very first sign would not be anything sudden or fierce, but something almost tender, a change in the colour of the most distant light. For all our lives, and all the lives before us, the far-off galaxies have been moving away, and their light has been stretched toward the red end of every colour, dimming into the deep. But in a contracting cosmos, that flow would reverse. The galaxies would begin moving toward us instead of away, and their light would slowly shift the other way, warming and brightening from red toward blue. The sky's deepest message would invert. A universe falling back together would announce itself first as a faint and gradual bluing of the most ancient light, the softest possible turning of the tide, and the sky's own background warmth would slowly rise as the great gathering closed in. There is a faint glow that fills all of space, the cooled afterglow of the universe's first bright morning, and today it lingers as a whisper of cold radiation barely above the lowest temperature that can exist. In an expanding cosmos, that glow keeps cooling, fading ever fainter as space grows wider around it. But in a contracting one, the very same light would be squeezed back together, slowly compressed and warmed, growing brighter and hotter across unimaginable spans of time. The cold ash of the first fire would, ever so patiently, begin to glow once more. The long winter of space would soften by the faintest degree toward a far and distant spring of warmth. The body has begun to settle now, the limbs growing heavy, the breath finding its own rhythm without any help from you. There is nothing to do here but receive these wonders and let them pass on through, like clouds crossing a darkened window. Lower yourself a little further into the idea of a cosmos that one day chooses, after all its long expansion, to turn back toward home. Imagine the great galaxies in such a future, beginning at last to draw together. For most of cosmic history, they have been racing apart, the spaces between them widening until the farthest ones slipped almost out of sight. But in the long fall of a closing universe, those distances would slowly close. Galaxies that had drifted lonely and far would find their neighbours growing nearer, brighter, more numerous in the deepening sky. The grand clusters would knit themselves more tightly, and the whole luminous web of the cosmos would gather inward upon itself, the lanterns of light easing closer together across ages beyond counting. It would be a homecoming written across the entire sky, slow as the turning of a continent, gentle as a tide that takes 100 billion years to reach the shore. Even our own small corner of the heavens already carries a faint foretaste of that gathering. Andromeda, the nearest of the great spiral galaxies to our own, is not drifting away from us at all, but quietly falling toward us, drawn by the patient pull of gravity across 2.5 million light-years of dark, closing that vast gap at something like 70 miles in every second. It is so far off that its light tonight set out before our kind had learned to walk upright, and yet, faint as it is, on a clear dark night the unaided eye can just make it out. The most distant thing a human being can see without any instrument at all, already leaning homeward. In several billion years the two great spirals will meet and flow slowly through one another, swirling, drawing out long bright streamers of stars and settling at last into a single greater whole. This is not the crunch itself, only a small and local rehearsal of it, a single duet within the vast orchestra. Yet it shows, here and nearby, that gravity can still reach across enormous gulfs and turn drifting apart into drawing near. The seed of every great gathering is already here, falling softly toward us through the night, and when galaxies draw close in such a future, there would be little of the violence one might expect, for the stars within them are spaced with an almost unimaginable openness. A galaxy looks crowded only from very far away. Up close it is mostly empty and quiet, its suns set so widely apart that whole galaxies can pass through one another, with scarcely a single star striking another. Even as the cosmos folded inward, the great spirals would flow through each other like two vast clouds of fireflies drifting together in a summer field, their stars threading past in the dark without a collision. The gathering of the universe would be, for the longest age of it, a graceful interweaving rather than any kind of crash, distances closing, light brightening, and almost everything passing peacefully by. It is worth pausing on just how unhurried the whole imagined story is, for its slowness is its deepest comfort. If the universe were ever to fall back together, the turning point, the very top of its long rise, where expansion gives way to contraction, would not come for tens of billions of years at the least in the futures where it comes at all. And the contraction that followed would last as long again, an entire second history of the cosmos unfolding in reverse. The crunch is not an event but an epoch, a chapter as long as all the chapters before it. Nothing in it happens quickly, there is no instant of alarm anywhere along its great length, only the stately reversal of a breath that has been going out since the beginning of time. The universe contracting is not at all like a fire spreading inward or a wave rushing back. It is far stranger and gentler than that. Space itself would shrink. The galaxies would not be flying through some fixed and waiting room toward a common centre. Instead, the room itself would slowly grow smaller, the very fabric between things drawing in, so that everything would seem to approach everything else at once, with no single place that could be called the middle of it all. Just as the expanding cosmos grows everywhere at the same time, the closing cosmos would shrink everywhere at the same time. There would be no centre to fall toward, only a universal and even drawing in. This means that in a contracting universe, no matter where you stood among all the galaxies, you would see the very same thing. Every distant light slowly approaching, the whole sky easing inward toward you. There is no privileged place that the cosmos falls upon, no single drain toward which everything pours. Every observer, anywhere at all, would rest at the apparent heart of the great gathering, with the universe closing softly in around them on every side. It is the perfect mirror of the expansion we know, where every galaxy sees all the others fleeing away as though it sat at the centre. In the fall, as in the rise, you're always at the middle of your own entire sky. These ideas can simply pass on through. There is no need to keep a single one of them. Imagine the mind as a still pond at dusk, with the facts only light playing upon its surface. The shape of the great idea is gathered now. The weight, the threshold, the turning, the slow inward drawing of all the lanterns. From here the gaze can wander among the finer textures of it, the smaller and stranger details that make this distant possibility so quietly lovely to hold. Let the gaze drift on into the deeper dark. There, in that deeper dark, the idea of a closing cosmos meets its truest mirror. For the Big Crunch is most beautiful when seen as the exact reflection of the Big Bang. Everything that unfolded outward at the beginning would, in this far ending, fold back inward in reverse. The cooling that has lasted 14 billion years would become a slow rewarming. The spreading apart would become a drawing together. The thinning of all matter into the vast dark would become a patient regathering of it. The cosmos would retrace its own long journey backward, like a film of a blossom opening, played slowly in reverse until the flower draws once more into a bud. The first morning and the last evening would rhyme across the whole age of everything. And in that great reversal, the cosmic structure we know would come undone, but tenderly, in its own due season. Today the matter of the universe is gathered into galaxies, and the galaxies into clusters, and the clusters into the long, luminous filaments of the cosmic web. In a deeply contracted future, that gentle order would dissolve in the opposite direction from how it formed. The great web would thicken and merge, the clusters would flow together, and at last the galaxies themselves would lose their separate shapes, their stars mingling into a single vast and brightening sea of light. The careful architecture of billions of years would soften back into a smooth and even glow, the way a sandcastle returns, grain by grain, to the formless beach from which it once rose. There is a strange symmetry, too, in what would happen to the night itself. For all of human history, the sky between the stars has been dark, and that darkness is a quiet sign of a young and expanding cosmos. But far along the path of a closing universe, as the galaxies crowd nearer and their light gathers in, the sky would slowly cease to be dark at all. The spaces between the stars would fill with brightness, the whole heavens warming and glowing as the lanterns drew close. In the deep contraction, there would come a time when night, as we know it, simply ended, when the sky everywhere blazed soft and uniform, lit from edge to edge by the gathered light of all things falling home together. It is a curious thing that the darkness of the night sky is itself an old and famous riddle, one that puzzled careful minds for centuries. If the universe were unchanging and endless, with stars scattered evenly forever in every direction, then any line the eye could follow would sooner or later land upon the surface of some star, and the whole night should blaze as bright as the face of the sun. That the night is dark instead is a deep clue that the cosmos is neither endless nor unchanging, that it had a beginning a finite time ago, and that its light is thinned and reddened by an ever-widening space. The dark between the stars is not emptiness alone, but a message, telling of a young and growing universe. In a far closing age, that ancient riddle would quietly answer itself the other way, the sky brightening toward the blaze the old thinkers once expected, as the lights drew near and the reddening turned to gold. There is a fainter sea than light filling all of space as well, and it too would be gathered in. Alongside the ancient glow of photons, there drifts an even older haze of ghostly particles called neutrinos, set free a single second after the beginning, slipping through worlds and stars and bodies almost without ever touching a thing. Many hundreds of them passing through the tip of your finger in every moment, unfelt and unstopped. In an expanding cosmos, this neutrino sea, like the light, grows ever colder and more thinly spread. But in a closing one, it would be drawn back together and warmed along with everything else, the most elusive and untouchable stuff in all of creation, gathered home at the last with the galaxies and the light. Nothing the universe holds, however faint, would be left behind in the great return. There is something deeply restful in remembering that all of this lies further ahead in time than the mind can truly reach. Even in the futures where the cosmos does fall back together, the turning would not begin for many tens of billions of years, and the full closing would take as long again. The Earth, the Sun, every star now shining. All of these have their own far gentler endings, long before any of it. The Big Crunch, if it comes at all, belongs to a cosmos almost unimaginably older than the one in which you rest tonight. A future so distant that it functions, in the heart, simply as a beautiful idea rather than as anything to wait for. For the universe's true present fate, the careful measurements we have made point a different way, and there is an honesty in saying so. Across the last several decades, astronomers watching the most distant exploding stars have found that the expansion of the cosmos is not slowing under gravity's pull, as a coming crunch would require, but is in fact quietly speeding up. Some faint pressure woven into empty space seems to push the galaxies apart ever faster, strengthening as the voids between them widen. We have given that pressure a soft placeholder of a name, dark energy, though it remains very nearly a mystery, and as long as it holds its present character, the universe seems set to expand forever rather than to fall back. The crunch, by our best current reading, is the future the cosmos has most likely not chosen. Yet that is not the end of the matter, and the gentlest truth here is how much remains genuinely unknown. Dark energy is named, but it is not understood. We do not truly know what it is, or whether it will always behave as it does today. If that strange pressure were ever to fade or to soften, or to turn slowly from a push into a pull across the long ages, then the old possibility of a closing cosmos would open once more. The far future of the universe is written in a hand we have only begun to learn to read. The Big Crunch is not ruled out for all time. It is only set softly aside, waiting in the wide margin of all the things we do not yet know, where so many wonders still patiently rest. There is a kind of comfort in that uncertainty rather than any unease, for it means the cosmos still keeps its deepest secrets to itself. The very fate of everything, whether all the galaxies drift apart into endless cold or fall back together into a warm and single gathering, depends upon the true nature of a thing we have not yet named with real understanding, only with a placeholder and a sense of wonder. The universe holds the answer in plain view, written across every empty stretch of sky, untroubled that we cannot yet read it. And there is something restful in being so small a part of so large a riddle, with no need at all to know the ending tonight. The not knowing is its own kind of peace. The fate of the cosmos, this question of whether it falls or flies forever, is not separate from the curve of space itself, for the two are woven together. In the mathematics that describes the whole universe, the amount of matter it holds also shapes the geometry of space across the larger scales. Whether it bends inward upon itself like the surface of an enormous sphere, or stretches flat and open, or curves outward like a vast and endless saddle. A cosmos dense enough to one day gather itself home would also be one that curves closed, its space bending round upon itself so that, in a sense, it has a finite size with no edge anywhere at all. A closed universe of that kind is one of the most quietly beautiful pictures in all of cosmology, for it is finite and yet has no boundary, no wall, no edge to ever reach. Picture the surface of a great smooth ball. You could wander across it forever in any direction and never once come to its end, and yet its whole area is finite and bounded. A closed cosmos would be like that, only in one more dimension than the mind can easily hold, a space you could travel through endlessly, finding always more galaxies ahead, and yet a space of finite size curving back upon itself. In such a universe, a beam of light, given world enough and time, might even circle the whole of everything and return to where it began. There is no edge to fear and no centre to find, only a vast and seamless roundness holding everything within it. In that closed and finite cosmos, the very same curvature that bends space round upon itself is the curvature that would, in the fullness of time, draw it back together. The closing of the universe in space and the closing of the universe in time are two faces of a single thing. A cosmos shaped like a great round surface is a cosmos whose expansion can be overcome, whose long rise must one day give way to a long fall. So the geometry of space carries the destiny of all the ages within it. To ask what shape the universe is to ask in the very same breath how the universe will end. And both questions rest upon that same delicate weighing of matter against the critical threshold, that single number poised near 1. There is nothing to solve here, nowhere to be, no problem waiting anywhere in the dark, only these mirror images of beginning and ending, of rising and falling, of a cosmos that breathes out and might, in some far age, breathe slowly in again. Let the idea turn over once, unhurried, and then loosen its hold, the way a held thought lets go of itself at the very edge of rest. In the long contraction, were it ever to come, there would arrive a curious and dreamlike reversal of the very rhythm of light across the universe. Today, distant galaxies grow fainter and redder as the cosmos expands, slipping out of reach. In a closing cosmos, the order would invert entirely. The faintest and most far-flung galaxies would brighten first as space drew in, climbing back into visibility, their light gathering strength as the great distances shrank. Galaxies that had vanished beyond the edge of sight in the long expansion would slowly reappear, returning to the sky one by one like guests coming home. The universe would not only fall together but would, in a sense, become visible to itself again, the lost lights of the deep past restored. And as the gathering tightened across uncounted ages, the warmth that fills all of space would climb very gradually from its present deep cold towards something gentler and then warmer still. That faint background glow, only the slightest fraction above the coldest temperature there is, would slowly be compressed and heated as the cosmos shrank around it. There would come a far-off time when it no longer whispered in chill microwaves, but began to warm the whole sky to the temperature of a mild and pleasant room, when the universe everywhere, in the spaces between all the stars, grew as warm as a quiet evening. The cold of deep space, which has lasted nearly the whole age of the cosmos, would soften at last into a universal and even warmth, spread through all of everything. There is a tender thought hidden in that slow rewarming, a thought worth holding lightly before sleep. The very same kind of compression that, in the beginning, made the early universe a brilliant and uniform fire would, in such a far ending, begin to remake that fire in reverse. The cosmos would retrace its own youth, growing denser and warmer by the faintest of degrees, across spans of time too vast to feel, moving slowly back toward the bright and even warmth of its own first morning. The close of the universe, in this gentle vision, would come to look more and more like its opening, until the two became almost impossible to tell apart. The last age and the first would meet in a shared and ancient glow. As the contraction deepened further still, across times beyond all counting, the warmth would continue to climb until the whole of space glowed not merely warm but bright. The background light that began as a cold and quiet hush would brighten across the ages into a soft and even radiance filling every direction at once. A sky no longer scattered with separate stars against the dark, but glowing and uniformly from edge to edge, the way the inside of a vast and softly lit lantern might glow. There would be no more night and no more separate points of light, only a smooth and tender brightness, everywhere and all at once, as the universe drew together. It is a curious gentleness of this far vision that, for almost the whole of the contraction, life and matter could carry on much as they always have, untroubled by the great turning. The reversal of the cosmic tide, when it came, would be so slow and so smooth that any creatures living within a closing universe might not even notice for billions of years that the galaxies had begun to draw near rather than to drift away. The change would be far too gradual to feel across a single lifetime, or 1,000 lifetimes, or 1,000,000. The crunch is not a thing that suddenly arrives. It is a vast and almost imperceptible easing of one motion into another, spread so thinly across so much time that, for the longest age, ordinary life would simply go on beneath a slowly warming and brightening sky. There is a symmetry, too, in the way the cosmos might gather its scattered matter back together. Today, gravity slowly draws drifting gas into clouds, and clouds into stars, building structure out of smoothness across the long ages. In a deeply closing universe, that same patient force would keep gathering, only now with all of space drawing in to help it, pulling the matter together not just into stars and galaxies, but, at the very last, into ever denser and warmer regions, the gathered substance of everything pressing nearer with each passing age. Gravity, which has built every faint thing in the sky, would also be the hand that draws it all home. There is a particular phrase that cosmologists sometimes use for the very deepest stages of a closing universe, and it is, fittingly, the mirror of the name given to the beginning. Just as the universe is thought to have emerged from an extraordinarily hot and dense early state, a contracting cosmos would, at its furthest end, approach a final hot and dense gathering of everything, a state sometimes spoken of as the Great Singularity, the close that answers the opening. It is the point toward which the whole long fall would tend, though whether the cosmos ever truly reaches such a point, or whether something gentler intervenes long before, remains entirely unknown. The ending, like the beginning, hides itself behind a veil that no instrument has ever pierced. And here the great idea opens onto one of its loveliest possibilities, a thought open enough to dream upon. Some have wondered whether a universe that falls all the way back together need truly end at all, whether, at the very bottom of its long descent, it might not simply stop but rebound, springing outward once more into a fresh expansion, a new beginning rising from the close of the old. This idea is sometimes called the Big Bounce, the notion that the crunch of one universe might become the bang of the next, that the cosmos could breathe out and in again across unimaginable cycles, each ending becoming a beginning. Whether nature truly works this way, no one yet knows. But it is a tender thing to hold, that even the deepest close might be only a turning and never a full stop. That is the image to rest in, a cosmos breathing slowly, out and in, across spans of time beyond all imagining. From there the quieter details open, the careful weighing of all the matter in the sky, the patient measurements, the science of how anyone could ever hope to know which ending waits in the deep. To learn whether the cosmos will ever fall back together, astronomers must somehow weigh the entire universe, and it is a marvel that this can be attempted at all. They do it by careful and indirect means, by measuring how fast galaxies move, how strongly they cluster, how the most ancient light is patterned across the whole sky. The more matter a region holds, the harder its gravity tugs upon the galaxies within, hurrying them along faster than the smooth flow of expansion alone would carry them, so the very speeds of galaxies, read against their distances, report the weight of all that lies around them. From all of this, patiently gathered over many years, astronomers can estimate how much matter and energy fills the cosmos, and compare it against that delicate critical threshold. It is a kind of cosmic weighing performed entirely from within by creatures who can never step outside the very thing they are measuring. And the wonder is not only the answer they find, but that the question can be asked and approached at all, from one small world adrift in the dark. When astronomers add up all the matter they can find, the stars, the gas, the dust, and the great unseen halos of dark matter woven through every galaxy, they find that it amounts to only about a third of the critical density on its own. By the weight of matter alone, the universe falls short of the threshold needed to one day reverse, suggesting a cosmos that would expand forever rather than fall back. Yet the full accounting is stranger still, for matter is not the only thing that bends the universe's fate. The mysterious dark energy contributes too, and when everything is weighed together, the total comes remarkably close to the critical value, though arranged in such a way that the expansion accelerates rather than slows. The books of the cosmos balance near that magic number, but not in the manner that brings the great gathering home. There is a beauty in how nearly the universe sits at that perfect balance, neither plainly open nor plainly closed. Across all the careful measurements, the total density of the cosmos comes out astonishingly close to the critical value. So close that, on the larger scales, space appears to be very nearly flat, neither bending sharply inward nor outward, but stretched and almost perfectly level. This delicate flatness is one of the deep puzzles of cosmology, for there seems to be no obvious reason the universe should balance so finely upon the knife's edge between its possible fates. And yet it does, resting just at the boundary, as though the cosmos had been poised with extraordinary care upon the very threshold of all its destinies. The reason the universe sits so close to flatness is thought to trace back to its very earliest moments, to a brief and gentle stretching long ago. In the first sliver of an instant after the beginning, the young cosmos is believed to have expanded with extraordinary swiftness, doubling and redoubling many times over, and that sudden early smoothing would have flattened out any curvature space might once have held, the way the skin of a vast balloon grows flatter and flatter as it is blown ever larger. So the delicate balance we measure today, this nearness to the critical threshold, may be an echo of that ancient stretching, the deep past shaping the far future, the first breath setting the terms of the last. There is a strange privilege in being able to ask these questions at all here, from one small and ordinary world. The fate of the entire universe, whether it ends in endless cold or in a warm gathering, is a thing that beings made of stardust on a single blue planet have learned to weigh and ponder, using only the faint light that reaches them from the deep. There is something astonishing in that the cosmos has in us grown able to wonder about its own ending, and there is no urgency at all in the wondering. The answer, whatever it may be, lies so far ahead that it asks nothing of tonight but a soft and easy curiosity. The whole question of the universe's fate is sometimes gathered into three possibilities, three different endings, and the crunch is only one of them. There is the long expansion that runs on forever, the galaxies drifting apart into ever deeper cold and dark. There is the perfectly balanced case, where the expansion slows and slows towards stillness without ever quite stopping. And there is the closing case, the big crunch, where the cosmos rises, turns and falls back together at last. Which of these three the universe will live depends upon that single delicate weighing of all its matter and energy. Three doors stand open at the end of all the ages, and the cosmos has chosen one of them, though we're still learning which. There is a subtle and lovely refinement here, well worth a single thought, for the discovery of dark energy loosened the old tie between the shape of space and the fate of the cosmos. In the simplest picture, where matter alone fills the universe, a closed and curving space would always fall back together, and an open one would always fly apart, geometry and destiny bound tightly as one. But once that strange pressure of the vacuum entered the story, the two could part ways. A universe even slightly curved closed might, with enough dark energy, still expand forever, and the simple rule that closed means falling holds true only in a cosmos without that gentle vacuum pressure. The shape of space and the end of time, once thought to be a single question, became two. So in our own universe, with its mysterious dark energy, the fate is no longer read off the curvature alone, but from the deeper character of that vacuum pressure itself. The space we live in is very nearly flat, balanced just at the dividing line, and yet, because of dark energy, even that fine balance does not by itself decide whether the cosmos falls or flies. The answer lies instead in whether the dark energy holds steady, or fades, or grows. It is a reminder that nature is often subtler than our first clean pictures of it, that the universe keeps a few surprises folded into even its simplest seeming rules. When astronomers express how much ordinary and dark matter together fill the cosmos, measured against that critical threshold, they find a value near a third, the matter of the universe falling well short on its own, of the weight that the simplest closing would require. The rest of the great balance is made up by the dark energy, which does not gather things together but eases them apart. So by the weight of all its matter alone, our cosmos leans toward an open and ever-expanding fate. It is only the strange and pushing dark energy that fills the books to their near-perfect balance, and that for now sends the galaxies drifting apart rather than home. The patient work of weighing the universe and reading its fate is far from finished, and new eyes are even now turning toward the deep to measure the dark energy more closely than ever before. Great surveys are mapping the positions of many millions of galaxies, tracing how they are spread and how they have drifted across the ages, all to learn the true and hidden character of that vacuum pressure, and so to learn a little better which ending the cosmos truly holds. The question of how all things end is a living one still, pursued and refined, never quite closed. And there is something hopeful in that ongoing reaching, this patient human effort to know the fate of everything. It is worth resting on how recent all of this understanding truly is. The expanding universe was discovered less than a single human lifetime before the accelerating one. The dark energy that may decide the cosmos's fate has been known for only a few short decades. We are living in the very early days of understanding how the universe might end, near the beginning of a story that will unfold across the coming ages of patient discovery. The picture we hold tonight is the freshest and clearest we have ever had, and yet it is surely only a sketch of something richer still, waiting to be drawn by the careful minds of ages yet to come. These thoughts can pass on through, like grey clouds across a dim window. The shape of the science is gathered here, the weighing, the threshold, the flatness, the three quiet endings. Ahead lie the people who first dreamed these ideas, and the strange tender textures of a cosmos imagined falling slowly home. The idea of a universe that might one day fall back together is woven all through the early history of our understanding of the cosmos, and it arrived hand in hand with the discovery that space could move at all. When the equations describing an entire universe were first solved, in the calm years of the early 20th century, they revealed something startling and gentle. A cosmos filled with matter could not be static. It had to expand or contract, and among the futures those equations allowed was the closed and finite one, the universe that rises and then comes home. The Big Crunch, in this sense, is nearly as old as modern cosmology itself, written into its very first equations, a possibility glimpsed at the dawn of all our knowing. Even the great founder of our modern picture of gravity once leaned for a time toward the idea of a closed and finite cosmos. In his first thoughts about the universe as a whole, the physicist who reshaped our understanding of space and time imagined a cosmos that curved round upon itself, finite in size and yet without any edge, a great seamless roundness holding all the stars within it. He even introduced a special term into his equations to try to hold this cosmos still and unchanging. Only later, when the galaxies were found to be truly flying apart, did the picture shift toward expansion. But that early vision of a closed universe, finite and edgeless, has never quite left cosmology, and it lingers still in the tender idea of a cosmos that might one day come gathering home. It was a patient astronomer, peering through a great telescope at the faint smudges of distant galaxies, who first showed that the universe was expanding at all, that the galaxies were rushing apart, their light stretched toward the red. And it is a lovely symmetry that the very discovery which revealed the expansion also opened, in the same breath, the question of whether that expansion might one day reverse. For if the cosmos was growing, then one could ask whether it would grow forever, or slow, or fall back. The finding that the universe moves was also the finding that it has a fate, and the Big Crunch took its place among the possible endings the very moment the great drifting apart was first seen. For much of the 20th century, the closed and falling universe was considered a genuine and serious possibility, even a favoured one by some, for there was a certain elegance in a cosmos that mirrored its own beginning, that ended much as it had begun. Generations of astronomers worked patiently to measure the density of the universe, to weigh its matter against that critical threshold, hoping to learn which way the great balance tipped. The Big Crunch was, for a long and thoughtful age, one of the leading guesses for how everything might end, a respected and carefully studied future, sketched in equations and weighed in observations across many decades. The picture shifted near the very end of the 20th century, with one of the most surprising discoveries in all of science. Two teams of astronomers, working separately and in quiet rivalry, watching the faint light of distant, exploding stars far across the cosmos, expected to measure the gradual slowing of the cosmic expansion under gravity's pull, a slowing that might, if strong enough, one day lead toward a crunch. Instead, both teams found the opposite, and found it at the same time. The far supernovae were dimmer, and so farther away than a slowing universe could explain. The expansion was not breaking at all, but speeding up. The galaxies were accelerating apart, pushed by some unknown pressure woven into empty space. It was a finding so unexpected, so contrary to what everyone had assumed, that each team checked it again and again, hunting for some error in the dust or the light, before they dared to believe it. That two separate groups arrived at the same strange answer was much of what made it impossible to dismiss, and it reshaped our whole sense of how the universe will end. That discovery of the accelerating cosmos was honoured with the highest recognition in science, for it changed the deep story of everything's fate. It revealed that the universe is not coasting toward a possible gathering, but is instead being pushed ever faster apart by the mysterious dark energy. And so the Big Crunch, once a leading candidate for the end of all things, slipped toward the margins, set aside in favour of an endless and accelerating expansion. Yet even in that shift there is no harshness, only the slow and honest turning of understanding as new light arrives. The cosmos revealed a little more of itself, and our picture of the ending softened and changed, the way a guess gives way gracefully to a measurement. Even with dark energy pushing the galaxies apart, the door to a closing universe is not entirely shut, and honesty leaves it softly ajar. For we do not know whether dark energy will hold its present character forever. Were it ever to weaken, or to change its nature as the eons wore on, the ancient chance of a crunch could return. Some thoughtful pictures of the far future even imagine a dark energy that slowly turns from a push into a pull, drawing the cosmos back together after all, long ages from now. The ending is not yet written in stone. It rests still, in the wide and gentle margin of all we have yet to learn. There is a particular and beautiful idea, sometimes explored in careful thought, of a cosmos that expands for a long while, and then, very slowly begins to fall. A future in which the acceleration we see today is only a passing phase. In such a vision, the strange pressure of dark energy would weaken across unimaginable spans of time, allowing gravity to reassert its patient pull, until at last, the galaxies that had drifted so far apart began their long journey home. This kind of cosmos would still end in a crunch, only after a far longer and stranger road than the simplest closing universe, a road that climbs higher and lingers longer before turning at last toward the gathering. It is one of the many possibilities still resting in the deep, neither proven nor ruled out. There is a kind of cosmos, too, that might fall back together not through any change in dark energy at all, but through the strange behaviour of the universe's deepest fields, in pictures so subtle they border on dream. In some careful theories, the energy hidden in the empty vacuum of space could, across vast ages, shift very gradually from a gentle push toward a gentle pull, slowly reversing the expansion and bringing on a far future close. These are speculative visions, held lightly by those who explore them, more thought experiment than firm prediction. But they show how many paths still lead, in principle, toward a contracting cosmos, how the great gathering remains, in the deep mathematics, one of the many futures the universe might hold. Among the most beautiful of these visions is the dream of a cyclic universe, a cosmos that has not one big bang and one possible crunch, but an endless succession of them, expansion and contraction, following one another across eternity like the slow swing of a vast pendulum. In such a picture, each universe rises from the close of the one before, expands for untold ages, slows, falls back together into a great gathering, and then rebounds into a fresh beginning. Over and over, world without end. The big crunch in this dream is never truly an ending at all, but only the quiet turning point between one cosmos and the next, the hinge upon which everything swings round again. The cyclic idea is among the oldest dreams of humankind, far older than any telescope, and there is a deep comfort in how it echoes across so many ages and peoples. Long before modern science, many of the world's old traditions imagined time itself as a great wheel, the cosmos endlessly born, dissolving and born again, across spans of time so vast they could scarcely be spoken. The modern notion of a bouncing or cyclic universe, where each crunch becomes a bang, is a scientific rhyme with that ancient intuition, the sense that the deepest rhythm of all things is not a single line with two sharp ends, but an endless circle, a breathing in and out with no first breath and no last. Whether the universe truly cycles or bounces or simply expands forever into the cold, no one yet knows, and the not knowing is no burden at all. These are among the very deepest questions there are, and they lie so far beyond the reach of any present instrument that they remain, for now, open possibilities, held in the mind rather than settled in fact. There is a freedom in that openness, in living within a cosmos whose ultimate fate is still a kind of beautiful mystery, still unwritten, still waiting in the wide dark. You need not choose an ending tonight. You may simply rest among all of them at once, each one a gentle dream. The equations that first allowed for a falling universe were the gift of a thoughtful Russian mathematician, working in the early 1920s amid hard and difficult years. Studying the freshly written laws of gravity, he found that they described not one universe but a whole family of them, some that expand without end, some that hang in delicate balance, and some that rise for a time and then fall back together. He saw, in pure mathematics, years before any telescope could confirm a word of it, that the cosmos must be a living, changing thing, and that one of its possible lives was the closed and gathering one. When he first sent his result to the great founder of relativity himself, it was met with doubt, the master at first believing a mistake had crept into the working, only to withdraw the objection soon after and grant that the young mathematician had been right all along. He died very young, only a few years later, of a sudden illness, before the galaxies were ever found to be moving, never knowing that the universe he had glimpsed in his equations was the very one we live in. The possibility of a crunch was, in a sense, his quiet legacy to the world. His name lives on in the very equations that govern the whole expanding and possibly contracting cosmos, the gentle mathematical heart of all our thinking about its fate. Those equations take the total density of matter and energy, and the curvature of space, and the strange pressure of the vacuum, and from them they tell how the size of the universe changes across all of time, whether it grows forever, or slows to a stop, or turns and falls. Everything wandered through tonight, every possible ending, lives inside that small and elegant set of relations. It is a marvel that the destiny of all the galaxies can be written so compactly, in a handful of symbols that a patient student might learn in an afternoon. A quiet priest, who was also a careful scientist, was among the first to picture the whole universe beginning from a single tiny seed, what he called the primeval atom, the entire cosmos once gathered into one bright point, and unfolding outward like a soft burst of fireworks, the galaxies its drifting sparks. He saw that the heavens were expanding some years before the great telescope settled the matter, reading it first from the equations and from the reddened light of the galaxies. And he wondered, too, about a cosmos that might rise and fall and rise again, imagining what he sometimes called a phoenix universe, one that gathers itself back together at the end of an age only to begin afresh, like a flame rekindled from its own embers. It is a lovely thing that one of the founders of our modern picture of an expanding cosmos also held in mind the dream of one that returns. The very idea of beginning and of ending, of bang and of possible gathering, has been entwined since the earliest days of all our thinking about the heavens. Another thoughtful physicist working in the same early decades studied with great care the idea of a universe that oscillates, that swings between expansion and contraction, again and again across the long reaches of time. And he noticed something deep and profound, that with each great cycle, a certain hidden quantity, a measure of disorder and spent warmth that the laws of nature never let decrease, would tend to grow, gathering from one cycle into the next, so that no two cycles could ever be exactly alike. An oscillating cosmos, he found, would not repeat itself perfectly, but would change a little with each breath, each new expansion swelling a little larger and lasting a little longer than the one before, and reading the cycles backward, they would grow ever smaller and briefer, hinting that even an endlessly bouncing universe could not have been bouncing forever, but might have had a first faint swing far back in time. It is a tender wrinkle in the dream of an eternal rhythm, the sense that the cosmos, even in its breathing, never quite traces the same circle twice. There were times, too, when some thinkers preferred a cosmos with no beginning and no ending at all, a universe in a kind of perpetual and unchanging steadiness, forever expanding yet forever the same, with fresh matter appearing to fill the widening spaces. It was an elegant and peaceful idea, held seriously for a while, a cosmos that simply was, without any first dawn or final close. But the discovery of that faint and ancient afterglow, the cooled light of a hot beginning, pointed instead toward a universe that did have a fiery dawn, and so had a history and a fate. The finding that the cosmos began also opened once more the question of how it might end, and returned the big crunch and all the other possible endings to the realm of real and open questions. To weigh the universe and read its fate, astronomers use more than one ruler, and one of the loveliest is a faint and ancient pattern, frozen into the spreading of the galaxies themselves. In the early cosmos, before there were any stars, real sound waves rippled outward through the hot and glowing haze, spreading like the rings from a stone dropped in a pond, and when that haze at last cooled and cleared, those waves were frozen in place mid-spread, leaving behind a soft and preferred distance, a faint extra likelihood that any two galaxies will be found a certain span apart, a hush of ancient music pressed into the very arrangement of the heavens. That frozen ripple, still detectable today across the sky, serves as a kind of cosmic measuring rod, a standard ruler whose true length we know, so that by seeing how large it now appears we can gauge how far space has stretched across the ages, and so, in part, which fate the universe holds. There is a marvel hidden in just how full of that ancient light all of space still is. Though the afterglow of the first fire has cooled almost to the floor of cold, every thimbleful of space around you holds some 400 of its faint photons, streaming through the room and through your resting body unfelt, more than 1 billion of them for every single atom of ordinary matter in the whole universe. In a closing cosmos, all of that vast sea of old light would be gathered back together and pressed warm again, the very same photons that now drift unseen through the dark becoming, in the end, the brightness of a sky kindled once more. The night you rest beneath is already brimming with the light of the beginning, hushed and waiting. There is a tender thread, too, between the falling of the galaxies and the ancient ripple frozen into their spread. That preferred distance between galaxies, stamped into the heavens when the early haze cleared, has itself been carried outward and stretched wider by every age of expansion. Were the cosmos ever to turn and fall, that same standard span would slowly shrink again, the frozen music of the early universe drawing its notes a little closer together. By watching whether that ancient ruler grows or one day begins to narrow, those who study the deep could read, across unimaginable ages, the very turning of the cosmic tide. The ruler is laid across the whole sky, patient and exact, asking only to be read. From all these patient measurements together, Woven from the afterglow and the exploding stars and the ancient ripples in the galaxies, the age of the cosmos is now known with confidence. Very nearly 14 billion years have passed since the Great Beginning. Known too is the rate at which space is currently stretching, the pace at which the galaxies drift apart. These numbers, hard-won across a century of quiet work, are the foundation upon which every picture of the universe's ending rests. To even speak of a crunch, or an endless cold, is to stand upon this patient scaffolding of measurement, built up from the faint light of the deep. There is a harmony too hidden in those numbers, for the rate at which the cosmos now expands sets its own natural measure of time, and that measure turns out to be close to the age of the universe itself. The pace of the great stretching, read the right way, tells roughly how long the galaxies have been drifting apart, and it whispers the same figure that the afterglow and the exploding stars reveal. It is a reassuring agreement, these different windows onto the cosmos all pointing toward the same vast span of years. When several measurements, made in wholly different ways, all gather toward a single answer, there is a deep comfort in it, a sense that we are reading the universe truly, that its long story hangs together, whole. There is a wonder in how gravity itself lends us a way to weigh the great clusters of galaxies, and so to help judge the density of the whole cosmos. Because mass bends the very path of light passing near it, a massive cluster will curve and focus the light of more distant galaxies behind it, smearing their images into soft luminous arcs, and now and then, when the alignment is near perfect, drawing the far light into a complete and shining circle, a ring of one galaxy's glow wrapped clean around another. By measuring how strongly the light is bent, astronomers can weigh the unseen mass of the cluster, including all its hidden dark matter, for it is the total weight that decides how sharply the light is curved. Nothing need be touched and nothing lit. The bending of starlight alone betrays the mass. It is one more thread in the great weighing of the universe, one more way of asking how much the cosmos holds and which way its long balance tips. There is a sheer patience in all this work, the fate of the entire universe pieced together across generations, by countless patient hours at telescopes and desks, each measurement adding one faint thread to the whole. No single person could ever weigh the cosmos alone. It has taken a long relay of careful minds, each handing the question onward, refining it a little, passing it to the next. The story of how we came to glimpse the universe's possible endings is itself a kind of collective tenderness, a long human reaching towards something far larger than any one life could hold. Astronomers even have a name for the number that measures whether the cosmic expansion is speeding up or slowing down, and it carries the whole question of the crunch within it. They call it the deceleration parameter, and there is a quiet irony folded into that name, for it takes for granted that the cosmos must be slowing, as everyone once believed it was. In the older picture, the expansion was expected to be breaking under gravity's steady pull, like a stone thrown upward, and a universe breaking quickly enough would be a universe destined to fall back home. So for much of the 20th century, measuring that single number was one of the great quests of cosmology, to learn how hard the brakes were pressing, and whether they pressed hard enough to one day reverse the great outward motion altogether. No one had thought to ask whether the number might come out the wrong way round, and describe not a breaking at all, but a quickening. When the measurement at last came near the close of the century, it held a tender surprise. The number had the opposite sign from what nearly everyone expected. Far from easing off, the cosmic expansion was pressing the accelerator instead, gathering pace as it went. It was as though a ball thrown upward, instead of slowing as it rose, had begun to climb a little faster the higher it went, lifted by some unseen and patient hand. That single reversal of sign, that one flip from breaking to quickening, was among the most startling discoveries in all the history of science, and it turned the likeliest fate of the cosmos away from the crunch and toward an endless, accelerating drift. The stars that revealed this surprise were a very particular kind of exploding star, and there is a lovely simplicity in how they served as cosmic measuring rods. A certain type of stellar explosion always shines, at its brightest, with very nearly the same true brilliance, like a row of identical candles set at different distances down a long dark hall. By comparing how bright such a candle truly is with how dim it appears in the sky, astronomers can measure exactly how far away it lies. These faithful explosions, scattered across billions of light years, became the faithful yardsticks by which the expansion of the whole universe was charted, and it was their light, carefully gathered, that revealed the great acceleration. The faint background warmth that bathes every reach of the heavens, the cooled afterglow we have returned to so often tonight, has a precise and even temperature, and it is part of how we weigh the cosmos and read its fate. That glow shines today at only about 2 3/4 degrees above the very coldest temperature there can be. A chill so deep it sits almost at the floor of all possible cold, and yet it bathes every direction of the sky in a soft and even hum. It was first stumbled upon by 2 careful listeners who found a faint hiss in their great horn-shaped antenna they could not silence, a whisper that would not fade no matter where they aimed, coming from everywhere at once. They cleaned the instrument and even cleared away the nesting birds, and still the hiss remained, for it was not noise at all but the sound of the sky itself. That ancient hiss was the universe's own first light, grown old and cold, and within its tiny ripples is written much of what we know about the shape and weight and destiny of everything. Within that even glow lie the faintest of patterns, ripples a hair warmer or cooler than their surroundings, and from the precise size of those ripples, astronomers read the curvature of space itself. The way the warm and cool patches are spread across the sky depends upon whether the cosmos bends inward, or stretches flat, or curves outward. And so, by measuring those delicate patterns with great patience, we can weigh the universe and ask which fate it holds. And the answer the ripples give is that space is very nearly flat, balanced exquisitely close to the dividing line, neither plainly destined to fall nor plainly destined to fly forever. The oldest light in the cosmos tells us how finely the whole of it is poised. When everything is carefully weighed together, the universe is found to be made of 3 unequal ingredients in 3 unequal measures. The ordinary matter that builds stars and worlds and living bodies, everything we have ever seen or touched, every planet and person and grain of sand, all the shining stars in all the galaxies, makes up only a small sliver of the whole, less than a 20th of it. A larger portion, around a quarter, is the unseen dark matter, woven invisibly through every galaxy, felt only by the way its gravity bends light and holds the spinning galaxies from flying apart. And the greatest part of all, very nearly 7/10, is the mysterious dark energy that pushes the cosmos apart. So nearly everything that exists is of a kind we cannot see and do not understand. The bright and familiar world of stars and worlds is only the thin foam upon a vast dark sea. It is upon the balance of these 3, and above all upon the strange nature of that largest and least understood part, that the entire fate of everything turns. The simplest picture of that dark energy is of a steady and unchanging pressure, the same in every place and across every age, a gentle constant woven into the very fabric of empty space, neither growing nor fading as the eons pass. If it truly is so simple and so steady, then the cosmos will most likely expand forever, easing the galaxies apart without end. But whether the dark energy is truly this perfect and changeless constant, or something subtler that drifts across time, is among the deepest open questions in all of science. The whole fate of the universe rests upon whether the emptiness of space holds a pressure that is fixed and eternal, or one that changes, and that for now remains a beautiful mystery. It is a curious and lovely thing to consider, that the destiny of all the galaxies should be written not in the bright and burning stars, but in the silent and seemingly empty space between them, in the faint pressure of nothing at all. There is a deep and lovely puzzle in why the universe should be so very nearly flat, so finely balanced upon the threshold between its fates, and the answer points back to its very first instant. Left to itself, a universe even slightly curved at the beginning would have grown far more sharply curved with time, bending quickly toward one fate or another, and yet ours, after 14 billion years, sits almost perfectly level. The resolution is that brief and astonishing early stretching, the sudden smoothing in the first sliver of time, which is thought to have ironed space so flat that it remains nearly level still. The delicate poise we measure today, this nearness to the dividing line of destiny, may be the quiet fingerprint of that ancient expansion. There is a particular kind of cosmos, explored in careful thought, that would end not by gathering inward but by being stretched apart, a future quite opposite to the crunch, and gentler to consider from afar than its name might suggest. If the strange pressure of dark energy were to grow stronger and stronger with time, rather than holding steady, it could in the far future stretch space so powerfully that even galaxies, and then stars, and at last the smallest things, would be drawn apart. This imagined ending is sometimes called the Big Rip, the mirror opposite of the Big Crunch, one a gathering, the other a scattering, the two standing at the far ends of all the things the cosmos might become. Which of these the universe leans toward turns upon a single hidden ratio, a number that captures how the pressure of the dark energy compares to its density. Astronomers write it simply as the letter EU, and it is one of the most patiently hunted numbers in all of science. If that ratio holds at a value of exactly -1, the dark energy is the changeless constant woven into empty space, and the cosmos expands without end. If it should ever rise a little above that mark, the push could weaken and let gravity draw all things home toward a far crunch, and if it should fall below, the push would strengthen toward the scattering of a rip. The entire fate of everything, the whole vast question of how the story closes, comes down to learning the true and steady value of that one small number, whether the emptiness of space pushes a touch harder or a touch softer than the perfect balance of a constant. And every great survey now mapping the deep is, in the end, reaching toward that single quiet figure. There is a further and lovely subtlety here, well worth holding for a single breath. In the simplest matter-filled cosmos, one curved, gently closed, the time the universe took to rise would exactly equal the time it took to fall, the whole arc rounded into a perfect and symmetric shape that mathematicians know by an old and pretty name, the curve traced by a single point on the rim of a rolling wheel. But once the strange pressure of the vacuum enters the picture, even that clean symmetry can soften and bend. A universe might climb for a great while under a steady push, and then, were that push to fade, fall in a manner quite unlike its rising, the descent no true mirror of the climb. The cosmos, in such a tale, would not retrace its own footsteps so much as find a new and longer road, back down toward the gathering. So the great possible fates arrange themselves into a gentle spectrum, with the crunch at one end and the rip at the other, and the quiet, endless cooling resting somewhere in between. Whether the universe gathers warmly home, drifts forever into the cold, or stretches apart depends upon the true and hidden character of dark energy, whether its push fades, or holds, or grows across the long ages. We do not yet know which of these the cosmos has chosen, and there is a deep peace in that uncertainty, for it means all of these gentle endings remain, for now, equally possible dreams, each one resting in the wide margin of what we have yet to learn. In recent years, the patient measuring of the dark energy has even begun to whisper, very softly and not yet certainly, that its push might not be perfectly constant after all, that it might be changing, ever so slightly, across the long sweep of cosmic time. These are early hints, held cautiously by those who study them, far from any settled conclusion. But if dark energy truly does evolve, then the far future of the cosmos is less fixed than it once seemed, and the old possibility of a gathering close drifts back into the realm of the thinkable. The universe keeps revealing itself a little at a time, and with each new measurement the story of its ending softens and shifts, never quite finished, always open. There is a beautiful and careful picture, dreamed up by thoughtful physicists, in which our entire universe is like a vast sheet, floating within some larger space we cannot see, and a great cosmic cycle unfolds when two such sheets drift toward one another, softly touch, and draw apart again. In this vision, what we call the Big Bang is the soft meeting of the sheets, the moment of their kiss releasing the heat and light of a whole new world, and a far future gathering would be their next approach, the whole cosmos breathing in and out across unimaginable ages as the sheets draw near and part without end. It is a deeply imaginative idea, held lightly and explored with care, one of several quiet ways that thinkers have tried to picture a universe that cycles, a cosmos with neither a first beginning nor a final close. Another lovely and unusual picture imagines the very end of one universe flowing seamlessly into the beginning of the next, not through any bounce or collision, but through a gentle change of scale. In this vision, when the cosmos in its far future has expanded so vastly and grown so cold and empty that all the stars have faded and even the meaning of size itself begins to blur, that immense and empty end could become, when seen rightly, the smooth and uniform beginning of a fresh new universe. The end of everything would become the dawn of everything, the two joined without any seam at all. It is among the most poetic of all the cyclic dreams, a cosmos endlessly renewed, each ending opening into a new beginning, world following world without end. None of these pictures of a breathing cosmos is yet proven, and none is yet ruled out. They are the careful dreams of those who try to imagine how the larger story might be shaped. And there is a wonder in the very fact that the human mind, small and warm and brief, can reach out at all towards such immensities, can picture sheets of universe drifting together, or endings folding into beginnings, or the whole of the cosmos rising and falling like a slow and patient breath. To wonder at these things is itself a kind of marvel, and it requires nothing of you at all but a soft and easy curiosity held lightly in the dark. These thoughts can drift on through, like the turning of a great wheel seen from very far away. The history and the physics are gathered here, the early equations, the patient astronomers, the surprising acceleration, the three quiet ingredients, the cyclic dreams. What remains is the strangest and most tender texture of all, what a contracting cosmos might truly feel like from within, and what marvels would unfold along its long descent. If you could somehow stand within a contracting universe and watch the sky across the long ages, the very first thing you might notice after unimaginable spans of time would be a brightening of the heavens. The galaxies drawing nearer would grow larger and more luminous, and the dark gaps between them would slowly fill with light. The night would lose its emptiness by the faintest degree, the deep spaces between the stars warming and glowing as the cosmos folded inward. It would be the softest possible change, a sky growing imperceptibly richer, fuller, brighter, unfolding so slowly that 1,000 generations might pass before anyone was certain the heavens had changed at all. As the contraction deepened across further ages, the galaxies themselves would begin to merge and mingle, their separate shapes blurring together. The grand spirals and smooth ellipticals that fill the sky today would, in the long fall, flow into one another and lose their familiar forms, gathering into ever larger and brighter assemblies of stars. The sky would grow crowded with light in a way it has not been since the very early universe, when galaxies were packed far closer together than they are now. In a sense, the contracting cosmos would return to its own crowded youth, the lanterns drawing near once more after their long ages of drifting apart. The whole history of the universe can be told as a slow passing through great ages, and a closing cosmos would simply pass back through them in reverse. There was an early age when light and radiation ruled the young universe, filling it with brilliance, its energy outweighing all the matter there was. Then, as space stretched, and that radiation thinned and cooled, a long age in which ordinary matter held sway instead, gathering itself slowly into galaxies and stars, and the present age, only a few billion years begun, in which the faint pressure of dark energy has at last grown great enough to dominate, easing the galaxies apart. In a contracting universe, these great ages would unwind in the opposite order, matter rising again to rule as the galaxies gathered, and then, near the very close, radiation and light returning once more to fill the whole of space with their ancient brilliance. The cosmos would climb back down through its own chapters, one by one toward the bright first page. So the very last age of a closing universe would be a return to brilliance, an age once more of pure light and radiation, just as the very first age was. Near the close, the gathered warmth would grow so intense that the cosmos would shine throughout, every direction filled with radiance. The matter that had built all the galaxies dissolved back into a glowing and uniform sea. It would be the dawn light of the universe, kindled once more at its dusk, the same fierce and even brilliance that filled the first young moments, returning at the last. The cosmos would begin in light and end in light, the long Middle Ages of stars and worlds set between two brilliant and uniform glows. The slow warming of that ancient background glow would even pass across the ages through a slow changing of its colour, like a hearth warming from embers to flame. Today it shines unseen, in cold and quiet microwaves far beyond the eye's reach. As a closing cosmos squeezed it warmer, it would drift first into the soft, invisible glow of mild heat, the kind you feel from a warm stone in the sun. Then, warmer still, it would deepen into a faint and visible red, the whole sky beginning to shine, and warmer yet, it would brighten through orange and gold toward a brilliant white. The unseen warmth of the early universe would slowly become a light the eye could see, the entire heavens kindling into visible colour as the great gathering closed in. And for nearly the whole of that long fall, the gathering would unfold with the gentlest of patience, quickening only at the very end. Through almost all of the contraction, the pace would be so faint as to seem like no change at all, the galaxies easing nearer over reaches of time far beyond any feeling. Only in the final stages, ages beyond all counting, would the drawing in grow swifter, the warmth climbing faster, the great gathering at last picking up its pace. But even that final quickening would unfold across stretches of time longer than the entire age of the present universe, so that, from within any single moment, even the last great gathering would feel like a vast and peaceful stillness, calm as the hush of this very night. There is a tender thought too in how the very building of the lightest elements would slowly reverse. In the first few minutes of the universe, the simplest atomic cores were forged in the great heat of the beginning, hydrogen and a little helium woven from the primordial fire. In the last few moments of a closing cosmos, that same great heat would return, and those ancient cores might soften and come apart once more, the universe unmaking even its earliest and simplest ingredients as it gathered toward the close. The very first thing the cosmos ever built would be among the very last things it unbuilt, the long story drawn round in a perfect circle. If you could watch a single night sky across the unimaginable ages of such a fall, you would see it pass through wondrous stages. At first, the change would be far too faint to notice, the sky seeming as fixed and quiet as it does tonight. Across vast spans of time, the faint galaxies would brighten and crowd nearer, the dark between the stars softly filling with light. Later, the whole heavens would warm to a gentle glow, then to the brightness of twilight, then to a soft and even radiance with no darkness anywhere at all, and at the very last, ages beyond all counting, the sky would shine like the inside of a star, warm and uniform and complete. It would be the slowest and most beautiful of all sunrises, unfolding across more time than the mind can ever hold. There is a kindness in remembering that no creature would ever have to witness the swift and final stages of such a gathering, for they lie so unimaginably far ahead and unfold across spans so vast that any single life would pass within an utterly unchanging sky. The great warming and brightening would be smeared so faintly over such immense reaches of time that, in any one age, the heavens would seem perfectly still. Only by gathering up billions of years into a single glance could the change ever be seen at all. For anyone actually living within a closing universe, the night would simply be the night, calm and quiet, exactly as it is for you tonight. There is even a thought about the two great fates and what they would mean for any beings within them, a thought of loneliness and of togetherness. The endless expansion leads slowly toward a lonelier sky, the galaxies drifting ever farther apart until each is left alone in the dark, its neighbours gone beyond all seeing. But the gathering close leads the other way, toward a sky ever more crowded and companioned, the galaxies drawing near, their lights returning, the cosmos growing more together rather than more apart. Of the two endings, one is a slow scattering into solitude, and the other a slow gathering into company. And there is a warmth in the thought of a universe that ends not alone, but in the close company of all its returning light. In the far stages of such a contraction, the warmth of all of space would climb until the sky itself glowed with heat, and there would come a time when the whole universe, in every direction, shone as bright as the surface of a star. The background radiation, squeezed and heated by the great gathering, would grow so warm that space everywhere would be filled with a soft and even light, no longer cold and dark between the stars, but radiant from edge to edge. It is a strange and gentle thought, a cosmos in which there is no more darkness anywhere at all, only a smooth and universal glow, warm as a hearth, filling every corner of everything. In that warming sky, an unexpected and tender thing would happen to the order in which the great structures came undone. The galaxies, gathered into a single brightening sea, would have their matter slowly liberated by the rising warmth, the careful architecture of clusters and filaments dissolving back towards smoothness. The cosmos would unbuild itself in the exact reverse of how it was built, the grand structures of billions of years softening one by one into an even glow. There would be a kind of peace in that unbuilding, for it would not be destruction so much as a returning, matter flowing back toward the simple, smooth and uniform state from which all the galaxies first arose. There is a curious truth about the very end of a contracting universe, a truth that softens even its final stages. As the cosmos drew together into its last and warmest gathering, the conditions would come to resemble, more and more closely, the conditions of the very early universe just after the beginning. The same great heat, the same crushing density, the same smooth and uniform shine. The end would not be some strange and unfamiliar place, but a return to a state the cosmos has visited before, at its very dawn. The last chapter would read almost exactly like the first, only with the words running in reverse. This deep symmetry between the cosmos's possible beginning and its possible ending is one of the loveliest ideas in all of physics. The same laws of nature that governed the universe's first hot and dense morning would govern its last hot and dense evening. The same gentle equations describe both the expansion outward and the contraction inward. In a real sense, a closing universe would simply be running its own history backward, retracing every stage of its long unfolding in the opposite direction. There is a profound elegance in that, a cosmos whose ending is not a stranger to its beginning, but its mirror image, the two joined across the whole vast age of everything, like the two halves of a single slow breath. There is a thought, strange and deep, about what time itself might do in a contracting universe, a thought that has long fascinated those who ponder such things. Some have wondered whether, in a cosmos that falls back together, the very arrow of time might somehow point the other way, so that to any beings living within the contraction, their own future would still feel like a future, even as the universe as a whole ran backward toward its gathering. It is a deep and subtle puzzle, and most who study it believe time would still flow forward in the ordinary way, even in a closing cosmos. But it is a tender thing to wonder at, whether the very direction of time is woven somehow into the rising and falling of all things. The eyelids are heavy now, perhaps already lowered, and the mind floats easily, unanchored. There is a consolation in remembering that even in a contracting universe, for the overwhelming majority of its long fall, everything would seem entirely ordinary and calm. The stars would shine, the galaxies would turn, life could flourish beneath a sky that warmed and brightened so slowly as to be utterly imperceptible. Only in the very last and deepest stages, ages beyond all counting, would the gathering grow swift enough to truly feel. For nearly the whole of the Great Fall, a closing cosmos would be a place of peace, indistinguishable in any single moment from the expanding universe you know tonight. There is even a kindness in the idea that the universe, in such an ending, would grow warm again rather than cold. The other great possible fate of the cosmos, the endless expansion, leads slowly toward an ever-deepening chill, a long and gradual cooling toward the lowest temperature that exists. But the crunch leads the other way, toward warmth, toward light, toward a gathering rather than a scattering. Of the two great endings, one drifts toward cold and dark, and the other toward warmth and brightness. And there is something consoling in the thought of a cosmos that, if it must end at all, ends not in a long freezing silence, but in a warm and luminous coming together of all things. There is a marvel, too, in the simple fact that you, resting here in the dark, are part of how the universe comes to wonder about its own ending. The atoms that make up your body and your quiet mind were gathered long ago from the dust of ancient stars, and through them the cosmos has, in a sense, grown able to think about itself, to picture its own beginning, and to dream about how it might one day close. When you let your mind drift over the rising and the possible falling of all things, it is the universe itself, briefly gathered into a warm and breathing form, pondering its own vast and distant fate. There is a deep tenderness in that, a cosmos that has made out of its own ancient matter something soft enough to care how the long story ends. And the question itself is older than any of us, and will outlast us all. And there is a great peace in that. Long before you were born, careful minds were already wondering whether the universe would fall or fly forever. Long after this night, others will go on asking, refining the answer a little more with each passing age. You're holding the question for a while as countless others have held it before you, and as countless others will hold it after. One quiet keeper in a long and patient line, passing the wonder onward. There is nothing you must finish, nothing you must resolve. It is enough simply to have wondered for a moment before sleep. Even the span of time the universe has already lived is easy to rest upon. Nearly 14 billion years have unfolded since the great beginning, and yet, if the cosmos does one day draw itself home, that whole long history so far might be only the first small portion of its life, the opening of a story whose closing lies far beyond all reckoning. We stand near the early pages of something immense, in a cosmos still young and bright and full of light. Whatever ending waits, it is so distant that the universe we know tonight is fresh and new, scarcely begun, with almost all of its long story still ahead. So there is no weight at all in any of these vast questions, only a spacious wonder. The fate of the universe is the largest thing there is to ponder, and yet it rests so lightly upon the present moment that it can be held like a single soft feather, turned over once in the mind and then released. You need carry none of it. You need answer none of it. The cosmos will rise and fall or drift forever in just the way it must, over reaches of time so vast that this quiet night is utterly safe within them, untouched and unhurried, held in a present that no far ending can ever reach. In the very final stages of a closing universe, as everything drew together into its last hot and dense gathering, the familiar structures of matter would themselves begin to soften and unbind in the rising heat. Atoms would loosen, then the very particles within them, the cosmos returning step by step toward the simple, smooth, and unstructured state of its earliest moments. It would be the great unmaking that mirrors the great making, every stage of the universe's slow building, run in reverse until all the careful complexity of 14 billion years had melted back into a single warm and uniform simplicity. The cosmos would end as it had begun, smooth and bright and whole. And at the very threshold of that final gathering, the known laws of physics themselves grow uncertain, and a gentle veil falls across the rest. Just as we cannot see clearly all the way back to the very first instant of the beginning, we cannot see clearly all the way down to the very last instant of a closing universe. At such extremes of heat and density, our present understanding runs out, and what truly happens at the deepest point, whether the cosmos ends or pauses or rebounds, lies hidden behind a horizon no theory has yet crossed. The ending keeps its final secret to itself, as the beginning does, and there is a deep peace in leaving that last mystery unsolved. It is a soothing thing to follow the orderly stages by which a closing universe would come undone, for each step is simply a step of its own making, retraced in reverse. First, the great clusters of galaxies would draw together and merge. Then each spiral and ellipse would surrender its familiar form and flow into a single brightening sea of stars. Later still, as the sky grew warm enough to rival the surface of the stars, the starlight and the background glow would blend into one even radiance, and the distinction between a star and the space around it would soften. Step by patient step, the cosmos would climb back down the very staircase it once climbed up, unmaking its structure in the exact reverse of the order in which it was first so slowly built. As the gathering tightened further, the warmth would rise high enough to loosen the bonds that hold matter together, and here too the unmaking would follow a tender and orderly sequence. The molecules that make up cool and ordinary things would come apart first into their separate atoms. Then, as the heat climbed higher still, the atoms themselves would let go of their electrons, returning to the hot and glowing haze the cosmos was made of in its early youth. It would be the long story of cooling and settling told backward, the long knitting together of all the structure of the universe, unravelled thread by thread, until only the simplest and warmest of beginnings remained. Even the great black holes that anchor the hearts of the galaxies would take part in the slow gathering, drawing together and merging into ever larger ones as the cosmos folded inward. Throughout the long fall, these silent and massive anchors would meet and join, growing greater with each union, until the deepest stages of the contraction gathered even them toward the final close. There is a strange and quiet grandeur in the thought. The most enduring and unmoving things in all the cosmos, the great dark hearts of the galaxies, themselves drawn home in the universal gathering, no longer separate anchors but flowing together with everything else. There is a contrast worth resting upon between the two great endings the universe might know, for they treat the works of time very differently. The long cooling of an endless expansion would leave the cosmos scattered with quiet, inert remnants, dim embers and dark cinders, drifting forever apart in an ever-deepening cold, the faded relics of all that once shone. But a gathering close would do the opposite. It would draw every fragment back together and melt it down, returning all the matter of the universe to the same warm and uniform simplicity from which it first arose. One ending preserves the scattered ashes in the cold, the other gathers them back into the fire. There is a kind of completeness in that gathering, a sense of a story drawn fully round to meet its own beginning. As the very last stages of a closing universe drew near, stages so distant they lie almost beyond the reach of any present understanding, the smooth gathering might give way, some have thought, to a softer kind of unevenness, the cosmos folding in a little more in one direction than another, swaying as it closed. These deepest moments are explored only in careful mathematics, held lightly and with much uncertainty, for no instrument can ever reach them. But even there, in the final hush before the great gathering completes, the picture remains one of return rather than ruin, of a cosmos drawing back toward the same hot and uniform state it began in, by paths we're still only beginning to imagine. There is a humility and a comfort in how little we can truly say about that final moment. The deepest point of a closing universe lies behind the same veil that hides the very first instant of the beginning, where our present understanding of space and time gives out. To know what truly happens there, whether the cosmos ends or turns or begins anew, we would need a deeper picture of nature than anyone has yet found, a way of joining the laws of the very large and the very small that still lies somewhere ahead of us. And so the final close, like the first dawn, remains veiled, a mystery held in reserve, asking nothing of us but patience and wonder. It is a tender thought that we live at a uniquely fortunate moment for seeing the cosmos at all, far from any of its possible endings, in an age still brimming with light. In the far future, whichever fate the universe chooses, the view will grow simpler and dimmer, the galaxies either drifting beyond reach in an endless expansion, or gathering and merging in a closing one. Either way, the rich and varied sky we know tonight, scattered with countless distinct galaxies of every shape, is a passing splendour, a view granted fully only to those who live, as we do, in the bright and middle chapters of the cosmic story. We are the lucky witnesses of a sky in its fullest flower. There is even a thought about what beings in a closing universe might come to know, for the gathering would, in a sense, return lost knowledge to them. In our own expanding cosmos, the most distant galaxies are slowly slipping beyond the edge of sight, their light stretched too faint to reach us, so that the far future holds a dimmer and lonelier sky. But in a contracting universe, the opposite would unfold. Galaxies long vanished beyond the horizon would slowly climb back into view, the cosmos growing richer and more crowded with visible light as it closed. A closing universe would be one that gradually showed more and more of itself to those within it, gathering its scattered lights back into a single shared and brightening sky. There is a deep symmetry, too, in how a closing cosmos would treat the very smoothness it began with. The early universe was extraordinarily smooth and even, almost perfectly uniform, and only slowly did gravity gather its faint ripples into all the structure we see. A gathering close, in its final stages, would tend back toward that same great smoothness, the lumps and clusters and galaxies melting once more into an even and uniform glow. The cosmos would begin smooth, grow intricate and structured across the long Middle Ages, and then soften back towards smoothness again at the last, a great arc from simplicity, through complexity, and home to simplicity once more. These ideas can float by, there is no need to keep any of them. The textures of the long fall are gathered here, the brightening sky, the merging galaxies, the warming dark, the great unmaking that mirrors the making. What waits beyond is the wider meaning of it all, the quiet reflections on time and fate, and the strange comfort of so distant an ending. There is a profound perspective hidden in the very idea of a cosmic ending, whether it be a crunch or an endless cold, the perspective of how unimaginably far off it lies. Every possible fate of the universe is set so deep in the future that the numbers describing it lose their sharpness and become a kind of music. Tens of billions of years, hundreds of billions and far beyond, spans of time against which the whole history of the Earth, the whole long story of life is briefer than a single morning. To even ponder such an ending is to step outside the small scale of a human life and to rest for a moment in the vast and patient time of the cosmos itself, where nothing is ever hurried and everything has room to unfold. And there is a strange comfort in being such a tiny thread within so vast a story, rather than any sorrow in it. The ending of the universe, whatever shape it takes, lies so impossibly far ahead that it can never trouble a single night's rest, never cast the faintest shadow over any human moment. It is a thing to wonder at from a safe and gentle distance, like a far-off mountain glimpsed through a window, beautiful, immense, and utterly removed from the warmth of where you lie. The fate of all things is real, and it is grand, and it asks absolutely nothing of you tonight. You may hold it lightly, marvel at it softly, and let it pass on by like a cloud across an evening sky. There is a deep symmetry in the thought that the universe might end as it began, that the great story could be a circle rather than a line, the close folding back to meet the opening. So many things in nature move in cycles, the turning of the seasons, the rising and setting of the stars, the breathing of the tides along the shore. There is something natural, almost familiar, in the idea that the cosmos itself might share that rhythm, that the largest thing there is might rise and fall and rise again, like a breath, like a tide, like the gentle turning of a year too long for any mind to hold. The big crunch, when it is imagined as a turning rather than a stop, as the hinge of a bouncing or cyclic cosmos, becomes one of the most consoling pictures in all of science. It whispers that the lowest point of the long fall might be only a passage, that nothing is ever truly lost but only transformed and carried forward into what comes next. In such a vision, the matter of one universe becomes the matter of the next, the ending of one age, the beginning of another, across cycles without end. It is the gentlest possible way to imagine the close of all things, not as a final silence, but as a soft turning of the page with another chapter waiting beyond. There is a kind of unity in the idea of a closing cosmos, a sense in which everything that has ever been scattered would, in the fullness of time, be drawn back together. All the matter flung apart in the great expansion, the matter that became galaxies and stars and worlds and living things, would, in a falling universe, slowly return toward one bright and gathered whole, every distant fragment finding its way home at last. There is something deeply restful in that image, the idea that the long scattering of all things is not the final word, that the cosmos might one day gather its own self back into wholeness. It is worth resting on the simple fact that all of these grand endings, the crunch, the endless cold, the great balance held between them, are still in the end possibilities rather than certainties. We do not yet know with full assurance which fate the universe will live, and there is something wondrous in that uncertainty, for it means the deepest story of all is not yet finished being told, even in the mathematics. The cosmos keeps its ultimate ending open, a question still unanswered, a tale still being written across the vast and patient dark. There is a thought, humbling, in the realization that the matter which makes up your own body would share in whatever fate the cosmos finally chooses. The atoms within you, forged long ago in the hearts of ancient stars, are part of the same great whole that might one day gather back into one or drift forever apart. You're not a spectator standing somehow outside the universe's story, but a small living part of it, woven from the very same stuff that fills all the galaxies. Whatever the cosmos becomes, in the unimaginable depths of the future, you belong to it entirely, made of the same ancient matter, carried along on the same vast and patient current. There is a tenderness too in remembering that you live near the bright morning of the universe, far from any of its possible endings. The cosmos is still young, still rich with light and warmth, still kindling new stars and worlds across all the galaxies. Whatever far ending waits in the deep, the warm gathering of a crunch, or the long cooling of an endless expansion, it lies so far ahead that you rest tonight in the universe's youth, in a golden age of light and abundance. You are here at one of the loveliest moments in all of cosmic time, when the sky is full of stars and the great endings are nothing more than distant and beautiful dreams. These thoughts can pass on through, like clouds crossing a dim window at evening. The meanings are gathered here, the vast distance of every ending, the natural rhythm of rising and falling, the unity of a gathering cosmos, the gentle openness of an unfinished story. A handful of finer threads still wait in the dark, the last textures of the great idea. There is a lesson too in how the very fastest motion folds invisibly into perfect stillness, even in a falling cosmos. The galaxies, were they ever to begin their long return, would be approaching one another at tremendous speeds across the deep ages, and yet, because it is space itself that contracts rather than things rushing through it, no creature riding along would feel any wind, any rush, any sense of motion at all. Just as you lie here now, perfectly still, while the whole earth turns beneath you and races around the sun at many miles each second, and is itself swept along with the sun in a great circle about the heart of the galaxy, all of it unfelt, none of it stirring a single hair, so too would the inhabitants of a closing universe rest in apparent calm, while the entire cosmos drew in around them. The grandest motion of all is always, somehow indistinguishable from rest, and you are proof of it tonight, hurtling through space and yet utterly at ease. In the very simplest picture of a closing universe, one shaped by matter alone, there is a lovely and perfect balance between the rising and the falling. The long ages of expansion and the long ages of contraction would mirror each other exactly, the cosmos taking just as long to fall as it took to rise. The whole life of such a universe, from its first bright instant to its last warm gathering, would be a single symmetrical arc, climbing to a high point at the very middle of time and then easing down the other side. There is a deep elegance in that, a cosmos whose whole history is balanced perfectly around its own noon, the descent an echo of the climb, the ending the precise reflection of the beginning. And such a matter-shaped closed cosmos would reach a greater size, a high turning point, before beginning its long descent. There would come a single moment, the noon of the universe, when the galaxies hung at their farthest apart, when the great expansion paused, neither growing nor shrinking, poised for one timeless instant at the very summit of its rise. From that high stillness the long fall would begin, so that nothing within it could mark the turning. It is a tender image, the whole cosmos resting for a breath at the top of its arc, every galaxy as far from every other as it would ever be, before the slow and patient gathering homeward began. There is a curious softness in the thought that, in a closed and finite cosmos, a ray of light might circle the entire universe and come back at last to the place it set out from. Just as a traveller walking always forward across the surface of a great sphere would, in time, arrive again at their own front door, so a beam of light in a closed universe, given ages enough, could round the whole of everything and return once more to its source. In principle, in such a place, you might even catch a glimpse of the back of your own distant past, the light of long ago things having journeyed the long way round the cosmos. It is a dreamlike thought, soft and strange, a universe so curved that nothing within it is ever truly lost, only carried around and home. It is a great comfort too to remember how vast the timescale of any crunch would be, compared to the lives of the stars themselves. Our own sun will shine for some 10 billion years in all before it fades. The smallest and coolest stars may glow softly for trillions of years, yet even the longest stellar life is only a small part of the unimaginable spans across which a closing universe would rise and fall. The stars would live and die many times over, whole generations of them kindling and fading, long before any great gathering drew near. The crunch belongs to a scale of time so much larger than the life of any star that the two can scarcely be spoken of in the same breath. This means that whatever ending the universe holds, our own familiar sun and earth would have completed their stories long, long before. The sun will swell and soften and let go of its outer layers, leaving behind a slowly cooling ember, billions of years from now, and that quiet ending lies almost unimaginably nearer than any possible close of the cosmos itself. The fate of the universe, grand as it is in no way the fate of our own small world. The two unfold on scales so different that the one can never trouble the other. Your own warm corner of the cosmos has its own gentle and far closer story, complete in itself, untouched by the distant destiny of all things. There is a thought, too, in how the reach of what we can see would change in a closing universe. In our expanding cosmos, the horizon of all we can ever observe slowly grows, light from farther and farther reaching us as the ages pass. But in a contracting one, that great reach would shrink in its final stages, the observable cosmos drawing inward along with everything else. And yet, for nearly the whole of the long fall, the sky would only grow richer and brighter, more crowded with returning light. It is only at the very last that the view would begin to narrow, the universe folding its own horizon inward as it gathered toward the close. A closed and falling universe carries one more wonder within it. Such a cosmos is finite not only in space, but in time as well, bounded at both ends, with a first dawn and a final gathering, a whole and complete arc from beginning to close. There would be a definite span to all of existence, neither infinite past nor infinite future, but a single great and finite story, rounded at both edges. There is something restful in that wholeness, the thought of a cosmos that is complete in itself, a finished and unbroken thing, beginning, middle and end, all held within a single bounded sweep of time. These quiet thoughts can drift away, soft as mist lifting from still water. The deeper marvels are gathered here, the perfect balance of rise and fall, the high noon of the universe, the light that circles softly home, the gentle separation of every scale. Simpler comforts still wait in the dark, soft truths that ask nothing at all but rest. And there is a subtlety in how the expansion itself, which one day might reverse, is measured and named. The rate at which the cosmos grows is captured in a single number that tells how swiftly distant galaxies recede for every stretch of space between us and them. Were the universe ever to begin contracting, that number would simply slip across into the other sign, the receding becoming an approaching, the growing becoming a gentle shrinking. The whole great difference between a universe that expands forever and one that falls back home comes down, in the equations, to the quiet flip of a single value from one side of zero to the other. So delicate is the line between the cosmos's grandest possible fates. It is worth holding lightly just how the deep cold of space and the possible warmth of a closing cosmos are two ends of the very same simple thread. The temperature that fills all of space depends only upon how stretched or how squeezed that space happens to be. Stretch it, as the expanding universe does, and the warmth thins toward an ever deeper chill. Squeeze it, as a contracting universe would, and the warmth gathers and climbs. The whole sweep from the bitter cold of deep space to the bright heat of a final gathering is written in that single gentle rule, that to compress is to warm, and to expand is to cool. The cosmos keeps its temperature in the very size of itself. There is a wonder as well in the thought that a closing universe would carry its own light backward through its history. The most distant glow we see tonight is ancient, set out billions of years ago. In a contracting cosmos, that same kind of ancient light would slowly be gathered back in, brightening and warming as the distances shrank, until the whole sky shone with the gathered radiance of all the ages at once. The deep past and the far future would meet in a single luminous moment, every era of the cosmos folded together into one warm and uniform shine. There is something almost tender in that, a universe that ends by gathering all its own light, from every age, home. There is a deep and quiet thought in the idea that a big crunch would bring an end not only to space, but to time itself. For if the cosmos gathered all the way back into a single final point, then the very flow of moments, the before and the after, might gather there as well, time having a last edge just as it may have had a first. It is a thought almost too large to hold, and so it can simply be set down, that in such an ending there would be no more after, only a final completeness, the whole story of all things drawn round to its close. And there is a strange peace even in that, the idea of a time that is whole and bounded, with nothing left outside it to be missed. There is an honesty in admitting that whether the universe ever closes truly hinges upon a single deep property of dark energy, how its pressure relates to its density, a hidden character we are still patiently trying to measure. If that character holds steady, the cosmos drifts apart forever. If it softens or turns, the gathering becomes possible once more. Everything in the end waits upon that one subtle measurement, pursued across the years by careful instruments gazing into the deep. The whole vast question of how all things end comes down to learning the true and hidden nature of the emptiest seeming thing there is, the energy woven silently into the vacuum of space. And there is a tender mystery, unresolved and lightly held, in what would become of all that the universe has ever known were it to gather fully home. Whether the patterns of all that has been, every structure, every memory, every trace of all that once existed, could somehow carry through such a gathering, or would soften entirely back into smoothness, is a question no one can yet answer. It rests among the deepest puzzles of all, far beyond any present reach. And it calls for nothing from you in this quiet hour but a soft and open wonder, the gentle acknowledgement that some questions are simply too large and too distant to be answered now, and are all the more beautiful for remaining so. There is a kindness in the thought that, whichever fate the cosmos holds, it could never reach back to touch the warmth of this single present moment. No signal, no influence, no faintest ripple of any far future ending could ever travel backward across the ages to disturb the night where you now rest. The fate of all things, grand and immense as it is sealed away in a future so distant that it lies forever beyond the reach of now. You are perfectly safe within this moment, held in a present that no ending can ever touch, cradled in a quiet the cosmos cannot disturb. These are the deepest of all these thoughts, and they need not be carried any further. The largest wonders are gathered here, the possible end of time, the single hidden measurement, the tender unresolved mystery, the safety of the present moment. There is nothing left to reach toward, nothing left to solve, only the easy drifting of a mind at rest among the gentlest of all the things there are. There is a final balance to rest upon, the simple fact that the universe sits so near the dividing line between all its fates that we cannot yet say for certain which way it leans. By every careful measurement, the cosmos is poised almost exactly upon the threshold, so finely balanced that the smallest unknowns, the true nature of dark energy, the deepest behaviour of space, could in principle tip it one way or the other across the long ages. We live in a universe balanced on a knife's edge of destiny, and there is a deep and resting beauty in that poised and delicate stillness, neither plainly falling nor plainly flying, but held between. And here is a last truth to carry towards sleep, that whichever way the great balance finally tips, the universe will arrive there with infinite patience, in no hurry at all. Whether it gathers itself home in a warm and luminous close, or drifts forever outward into the gentle cold, it will take spans of time so vast that the whole of human history, the whole of life on Earth, is but the briefest flicker near the very beginning. There is no rushing in any of it, no urgency, no haste. The cosmos has all the time there is, and more, and it spends that time without haste, letting every age unfold in its own unhurried season. You may rest within that great patience now, carried softly on its long and quiet current. These thoughts can dissolve now, like the faintest light fading at the edge of a darkening sky. The last fine threads are gathered here, the stillness within all motion, the single flip of a number, the warmth held in the size of space, the gentle balance of all the fates. What remains are the very last and largest reflections of all, the deepest and most tender truths about endings and beginnings, and the strange comfort of belonging to a cosmos that breathes. There is a truth, gentle and consoling, in the thought that endings and beginnings may not be so different from one another as they seem. In the deepest pictures of the cosmos, the great closing and the great opening, the crunch and the bang, look almost identical when seen up close. The same heat, the same density, the same smooth and uniform glow. The line we draw between them, between ending and beginning, may be only a matter of which way we choose to face. What looks like a close from one direction looks like a dawn from the other. And there is a comfort in that, the sense that even the ultimate ending might be, from another vantage, the gentlest of new beginnings. There is a kind of peace in the thought that the universe holds its own fate so quietly, so patiently, never hurrying toward any conclusion. For nearly 14 billion years, the cosmos has been unfolding at its own pace, in no rush at all to arrive anywhere, content to let the galaxies drift and the stars shine and the long ages pass. Whatever ending waits, it waits without impatience, infinitely far off, allowing all the long story in between to unfold in its own good time. The universe is the most patient thing there is, and there is a deep restfulness in resting within so unhurried a thing. The great question of how everything ends, whether in a warm gathering or an endless cold, is, in the deepest sense, a question about belonging and return. Does the cosmos end by scattering all its pieces forever into the dark, or by drawing them back together into a single warm whole? It is a question with the very shape of a homecoming, and there is a tenderness in even being able to ask it, in being a small conscious part of a universe that might, in the fullness of time, gather its own self back into one. The largest story there turns out to be, at its heart, a story about coming home. Whatever the universe finally chooses to fall or to fly forever, there is a unity in it that runs deeper than any ending. The same laws of nature hold true everywhere and for all time, governing the first instant and the last alike, binding the beginning and the ending into a single seamless whole. The gravity that draws the most distant galaxies is the very same gravity that holds you softly to your bed tonight. The light that fills all of space is the very same light that warms your face by day. There is a deep order running through everything, near and far, first and last, and you rest within it, held by the very same laws that shape the fate of all the cosmos. The body is heavy now, and the mind slow and wide and entirely untroubled. There is one final gentleness to hold before sleep, the thought that you need carry none of these vast questions with you into the night. The fate of the universe will unfold exactly as it will, across spans of time beyond all imagining, whether or not anyone ever knows the answer, whether or not it is ever held in any mind at all. You may set the whole great question down now, like a smooth stone laid upon a shelf, and simply rest. It will keep. It has kept for 14 billion years, and it will wait, untroubled, for 14 billion more. Let the gaze settle now upon the very last and largest wonder of all, a single soft thought to carry you fully down into sleep. For in all the immense vastness wandered through tonight, the rising cosmos and the possible falling, the warming skies and the merging galaxies, the cyclic dreams and the patient weighing of all the matter in existence, in all of that overwhelming grandeur, here is the gentlest truth of every ending. Whatever shape the close of the universe takes, whether a warm gathering or a long and quiet cooling, it is woven, in the deepest mathematics, out of the very same threads as its beginning. The end and the beginning are spoken in a single language, written by a single hand, two faces of one unbroken whole, and there is no ending in it anywhere that is not also, somehow, a kind of return. This is perhaps the most consoling thought in all of cosmology, that the cosmos, for all its unimaginable scale, may move in the oldest and softest of rhythms, the rhythm of a breath, of a tide, of a season slowly turning. Out from the great beginning, across 14 billion years of patient unfolding, and perhaps in some far age, softly back again toward a warm and gathering close that is also, it may be, a new and quiet dawn. You are a small living part of that great rhythm made of its ancient matter, carried softly on its vast and patient current. The same deep peace that fills all the spaces between the galaxies is the very same peace that is settling now, so quietly, down into you. The universe, rising and falling across all the ages, and the one quiet soul who wonders softly at it, are in the very end the same single thing, breathing slowly and peacefully together in the dark. So let that gentle knowledge be the softest of all your pillows tonight. You belong entirely to all of it, to the rising and the falling, to the light and to the dark, to the great slow breath of the cosmos that goes out and may one day come home. There is nowhere at all that you do not truly belong, and there is nothing whatsoever that you need to hold or carry. The whole universe has been unfolding for 14 billion years only to arrive, at long last, at this one single quiet moment of rest, here, now, with you. The long journey through all these wonders is complete now, and there is nothing more for you to reach toward, nothing further left to know or to learn. And if you're still here, drifting softly at the very edge of sleep, another gentle journey is already waiting quietly for you there on the screen, ready and patient whenever you might wish for it, or never at all. There is truly no need to choose anything tonight. For now, there is only this, and this is more than enough. The warmth of where you lie, the slow and even rise and fall of your own quiet breath, and the soft dark gathered close all around you. You do not need to remember any single one of the wonders shared this night. Simply let them all go now, everyone, like distant galaxies dissolving softly into the first pale light of dawn. They have already done their gentle work, simply by passing through you. Whatever mattered here was never the knowing at all, but only the quiet, and the deep quiet is here with you now, complete and whole and unbroken, asking nothing of you at all. Let the breath grow slower still. Let the warm body grow heavy and still. Let the very last small thoughts drift away, like the faintest distant light, fading softly and slowly into the welcoming dark. There is nothing to do now. There is nowhere to be. There is only the warmth and the gentle weight of rest and the soft, kind night holding you close. Breathe in, slowly and deeply. Breathe out and simply let go. Feel how heavy you are, how safe, how very you are held. The galaxies are far away now and quiet, and they ask nothing at all of you. The dark is soft, the night is kind. Let everything settle now, and let everything be still. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.